Welcome everybody. For information, this meeting's being recorded, and if you'd like a copy of the slides at the end, if you put your email in the chat or directly message it to me, I'll send you a copy. This event is a collaboration between the BCS, the Chartered Institute for IT, and the Business Continuity Institute. I'm chairing this event, and we've got two great speakers. In this format, we found it best if you could put questions in the comments, and we will review these at the end. So why are we here? Users expect their service to operate 7/24, but they are failing at an increasing rate, with so many outages that they no longer make the news. This does not mean that the events are reducing, it's more that people are becoming blasé about them. We are here because we know that all digital systems are subject to failure, so recovery with business continuity is a must, as well as improving resilience through reducing the frequency and impact of outages. The landscape that we're operating in is complicated. Organizations want a high level of change. Users expect 7/24 availability, effectively a utility service. But software doesn't meet these expectations. It will and does fail. The picture on the slide highlights the particular problem of open source software, as well as the rickety state of systems operating in many organizations. Failures have a significant impact. CrowdStrike is estimated by insurers to have a cost to just the Fortune 500 of over 5 billion. Although cyber attacks get the news, they are not the most frequent source of failure. In the short term, AI will not be the answer. So how do we address these issues? Business continuity is a must. We must recover the service. Reducing the frequency of so Alice will cover this in detail, and then Jill will briefly describe some tools that we can reduce the frequency and impact of IT failures. Now to Alice, who will introduce herself.
Hi, everyone. I'm Alice Colton-Mark, and I currently serve on the global board for the BCI. For my day job, I lead technical resilience for LexisNexis, as well as chair the technical resilience working group for the RELX Corporation. So thank you for joining, and I'm going to dive into the world of technical resilience and what does it take to keep our services up and running no matter what happens. So if we go on to the next slide, anytime that we start talking about, well, what is resilience? And it's a term that's used all over the place for a variety of reasons. So I thought, let's start off with what is the definition of resilience? And as it's succinctly stated by ISO in 22300, it's the ability to absorb and adapt in a changing environment. It's that ability that is what we want to talk about today. What does it take to build that capability or the ability that we can absorb and adapt to the changes that are flying at us all the time, most which are out of our control. So if we go on to the next slide, we can take okay, this is what resilience is, but what are the resilience basics? When you look in the world of technology, which is what we're focused on today, the first thing is data protection. You've got to make sure you have protected your data. You've got backups, both offline and off account, as well as immediate access backups for whether you're doing failover, fail back, or you're needing to do recover from scratch scenarios. But number one, you need data protection. By the way, for any business continuity process, you also need data protection, your vital records, etc. So you must protect your data. That's number one of the basics. Number two, what are your dependencies? What are your upstream and downstream dependencies? What do you need to be able to restore service? Whether that is a process being performed by your staff, or it is a system or application that is running in your environment. What are your dependencies? What do you need to be able to restore service? No matter what this, don't focus on the scenario so much, but the ability to restore service. Next, you need a plan. You need a list of tasks. What is it going to take to restore or recover whatever it is that you are trying to restore? And last, but definitely not least, in fact, the most important thing is you need to test it. Does it work? And we need proof that it works. And this is becoming more and more prevalent throughout daily lives of anybody working in a large organization or a small organization with supply chain resilience and customers wanting to make sure their suppliers are ready to do it. They want proof. Auditors want proof. Regulators want proof, etc. So basics are protect your data, document your dependencies, know what they are, have a plan, whether it's a run book, a playbook, a checklist, whatever that plan is. You need something that prioritizes what needs to be done to restore service, and then test to make sure that it works. So as we look at this, then we can go and look at, okay, what are we in the protecting against? What's coming at us? What are the types of threats that we're trying to protect against? There's failure, just out and out failure of the process, the application, infrastructure, network, etc. Just as you saw in that picture, that diagram that Paul shared in the introduction, stuff is fragile. Technology is fragile. As robust as we make it, it still is prone to failure. So you need to know what to do when stuff doesn't work. Then you've got the corruption, which we're dealing with a lot of the data breaches, etc., other types of malicious attacks that are coming in, or just an engineer or a user fat fingered a command and we lost data. It wasn't intentional, it just happened. So that's one of the threats that we're trying to protect against. And the other one that we do hear about on a regular basis are the cyber attacks, the malware, ransomware, that basically your environment's being locked down and you can't do anything. It's being held for ransom. So those are a wide range of types of threats that we're working to be able to recover from or to keep on running no matter what is going on. But again, like I said, when you're coming into this resilience space and you're looking at what does it take to recover, it's not so much what caused the attack or what caused the issue, it's about the ability to get back up and running. So if we go on next, it's like, okay, well, what is that path to recover? What is that restore path? Well, we need to look at it at every layer in that product stack or that application stack, whatever applies in your organization. It's not specific to cloud. It's not specific to on-prem. It's wherever your digital assets are operating, you need to look at it at every layer in the stack. So your core infrastructure, the network, your compute and storage infrastructure, your tooling, including your source code. That is one that gets people all the time. Have you protected your source code? Definitely. Then we talked about the data, the metadata, the data about the data, the databases, etc. Then whatever your system platforms, say that middleware layer, that everything at that backbone that everything is running on, and then that top level, that say maybe the customer facing application. But being able to recover and test at each layer is important to drive towards having customer availability. So as we go on to the next slide, when we want to drive towards that real outcome we're going for, the resilience capability, we need to apply the recover and restore basics that we talked about, the data protection, dependencies, having a plan, and the test doesn't work. We need to apply that at each layer in the stack. So this is one thing that this one type visual really got the attention of my senior leadership when I finally said, it's not just about recovering the product. We need to be able to recover everything at every layer in the stack, because without the ability to do it overall, we don't know what's going to come at us. If we haven't built this capability, we're not really going to be able to say we're good. So only focusing on one layer, and then that's say, okay, we're good, that's not enough. You need to be able to do this at every layer in that operational stack. So as we move on, we look at, okay, sounds great, Alice, this is basics, you're taking me back to school. Okay, well, let's look at, well, what about cyber resilience? What's the special things that we have to do for cyber resilience, protecting against those very impactful encryption lockdowns. I'm trying to be careful what words I use because it takes so many different forms. But bottom line, if you have been compromised and your data is being held hostage, or your environment's being held hostage, one of the key places obviously is your Active Directory, or your key data, whatever that may be, that just totally brings you down to, just stops everything. I had a recent situation with my local healthcare provider network. I'm not alone here. A lot of others have experienced this, but their network was completely down. It took down everything, including phones, everything. And because everything is electronic records, that is really devastating to a whole community. So what is required to recover from a situation like that? And basically you need the ability to recover from scratch. Disaster recovery in times past has been more about recovering in place, or you fail over to your backup site. It's, your automated failover and fail back. You have automated detection. A lot of your high availability schemes or strategies rather leverage that strongly. And it's very effective for high availability, near zero downtime, though that's really the premise of the cloud. But when you come into this situation where your whole environment has been just taken down and you can't do anything, then you've got to be able to start over. So what do you need for that? You need the ability to have everything stored, copied, or backed up in immutable backups. Immutable backups then allow you to be able to take fresh kit, an empty server, a freshly built VPC in the cloud, or a whole set of servers on the floor that basically come in and you just recreate everything from scratch. So this is going to be at your operating layer, your operating systems, your applications, your data, everything has to have a backup, immutable backup available that is protected. It can't be corrupted. So it's important that you have those backups in place so that then, number one, you have the ability, at least you have a hope of recovering. But if you haven't done that, you're pretty well sunk. But if you have the data backed up, that's protected, that you can get to it, then you can start recovering. And then with having your plans, knowing your dependencies, having your prioritized tasks of being able to restore everything. But the most important vital thing to highlight here is testing is vital to demonstrate capability. You think you can do it, you've got it backed up, but have you tested it? Just as any good data protection engineer is going to tell you, you're only as good as your last backup, and can you restore that backup? And that includes here from the immutable backups and the ability to recover from in a clean environment and start over. So that is the big difference with cyber resilience. It's still the basics. You still have your protection, you've noted your dependencies, you have a plan of attack, and then you test it. But then the big difference here is that it's from scratch recovery for cyber resilience and immutable backups. So as we move on, the next thing I wanted to look at is like, okay, we talked about a lot of different things. There's several phases to resilience. It's a broad term, and you have, like I referenced, we have the day-to-day type occurrences. Database went down, power outage, another power hit or whatnot, and then, or maybe you had one of your network paths went down, but you have redundancy, so you can bring it back around. Those are standard types of things that you would deal with on a day-to-day basis. Business resilience, day-to-day type of things that happen here would be severe weather, illness, staff not available to come in, or staff refusing to come in because of whatever the issue is that is causing them to decide that. So day-to-day resilience is you have your business continuity plans, you have your operational resilience plans in place so that you've got your daily operations, incident management systems in place to handle that day-to-day. And on security, on that side with resilience or information security, you've got all the right security protocols in place to protect the environment and also, keep things from proliferating throughout your whole enterprise. But when all three of these types of resilience events come together and they're happening at the same time, that's when you're dealing with cyber resilience. It's that intersection of you've got technology that needs to be brought back up, you've got business processes and people that need to be, they need to know what to do. What are you going to do when your network's down and you have no phones and you have nothing? How are you going to take care of patients, say in that health network scenario? Or how are you going to take care of your customers that want access to their money and everything's down? So those are your business continuity plans. And then, of course, your security professionals are going to be in there doing the forensics and finding out exactly what happened so that we can get back up and running and know what the right plan or recovery strategy is. So there are three different phases. There's many other phases that come into resilience from an organization perspective, but these are the three that are focused on for today's discussion because it's focusing then on that intersection of all three that drive to that cyber resilience. So what is the day-to-day, but then also what do you do in that ultimate situation? So as we move on, what does this mean at from different perspectives within the organization? And I broke it up from you've got your product and business interests, the business stakeholders, your product stakeholders, depending on what your type of organization is. This could also be services if you're more of a public sector type of an organization. But think about it, who is that business owner or service owner that basically has that fundamental responsibility to the organization to deliver? In a for-profit scenario, who has profit and loss responsibility? So what does this mean to you, the product business owner? You need to be able to set what are the resilience objectives? What is that customer outage tolerance and data loss tolerance? So this is where your business continuity professionals, your resilience professionals are going to work with you to do that business impact analysis to determine what are your recovery time objectives, what are your recovery point objectives, and make sure you've identified your business requirements. Then the business owner needs to prioritize and fund the work needed by the teams to design and implement the resilience for your digital products and your systems and applications. And then also support regular testing of resilience capabilities. So business owner, this is what your role in resilience, the resilience picture is. And then as we look at the next group that I focused on is the developers, the engineers that are developing the code day to day, this more just focused on those that are designing and implementing the digital assets. But what do they need to be focused on? They need to be able to design and implement the product application and meet or exceed the requirements. So they're going to have to comply with whatever your guidelines are within and architecture guidelines within the organization. But they're going to be implementing, making sure that the data protection, security controls, and resilience documentation are in place and kept current. They're going to validate the resilience capability using the approved testing and deployment methodologies. So this is going to depend on whether you're running an agile shop and you're dealing with every sprint and deployment, continuous improvement, looking at making sure that you're iteratively testing the capabilities in a test environment. And then you're going to also continue to adhere to your engineering and architecture guidance for those effective testing methods. And then from a resilience professional's perspective, I need you to report the results of your testing and your documentation at updates. And also working towards getting automated methods of this reporting and results, depending on how your engineering organization is structured and how they use the tools that are available today. There's ways to drive this in to be automated so that you can do a lot of that governance in an automated fashion without having to do a manual check-in with everybody. But that's a discussion for another day. And then the DevOps engineers. So this is the operations stack. They're the ones that are going to actually look at the implementation of the operations infrastructure processes and meet or exceed those requirements for resilience. They're going to validate the capability against using the approved testing methods. So they're going to be the ones testing that resilience capability on a regular basis with whatever is running in the production environment. And then they're going to collaborate with the appropriate teams like the site reliability engineering, the network security teams, infrastructure development teams. This is if you have a large organization, you have all these teams, or it might be you're a small organization, you maybe only have a handful of people that do all of this, but basically making sure that you socialize those best practices and that they comply with your resilience principles and requirements. And this team also helps to establish and maintain what those best practices and requirements are in partnership with engineering and architecture. So as we move on, why are we doing all of this? And this is something that Paul mentioned in the introduction, is our customers expect us to do that. Whether your customer is a paying customer and you're a for-profit enterprise, or you are a community organization providing services, or public sector organization providing services to the broader community, they are your customer. What is their expectation? Their expectation is the products are always available no matter what is happening in our world, meaning our world, the person providing the services or the products to the customer, they really don't care what's happening in our world. They expect the service or the product or whatever it is that they are a consumer of, they expect it to be available all the time. And this is getting even more so as we move forward in this world, because everything is tied digitally. They also are getting very savvy at supply chain, and they are requiring evidence of the resilience capability. I know I personally deal with inquiries from customers at least once or twice a week, and that is only the ones that have already that got past all of the standard response inquiries that process that we have in place. But they are getting more specific about what they're asking for. So our customers expect that we have these capabilities in place, and it gets tougher all the time to answer those questions. So at the end of the day, we want the customer to stick with us, especially in the for-profit scenario. You want them to be, you don't want to lose your customer, because once you start losing your customer, getting them back is very difficult. And I know in the industry that I'm in currently, our competition is a mouse click away. So this is really, really important that we do everything in our power to make sure that we are up all the time. And this includes even those cyber attacks. How quickly can we get back up? You can get a little bit of grace from customers if you've been out of touch for about maybe a day, but after that, no, they've got businesses and other things they've got to do. They've got their own businesses to run. So you have to be able to be back up, or you can lose significant customer share. So as we move on, the next thing, last point that I want to talk about, and this is be about where we're going to transition to what Jill has to say today, is talking about resilience governance, managing those expectations. Can't manage what you don't measure. I mean, it's an adage that we're all used to, but it is still very true. And so being able to manage those expectations, you need metrics and reporting against the requirements on capability. I have found that in dealing with, especially the senior leadership, they really don't care. They've got plans and I've done tests, etc., or that, you know, we've done our BIAs. They don't, yeah, they know that, okay, that's fine. You find requirements, you got a plan of action. But what have you done for me lately? What are we capable of doing? What is our capability? That's what the senior leadership wants to know, because that tells them whether we're okay or not. Are we doing our due diligence in the business? So that is where we need the metrics and reporting, but reporting on the right things that resonate with the leadership. It's not always an easy answer. It takes time to figure it out, but once you do, hone in on that and keep at it, and also continue to improve that so that you provide that value. What is that business value back to the leadership? Also, business leaders require that evidence that we have their back. This is part of what I was just talking about. They need to know that if we get attacked or we have a major incident, we will be back up and running, that we're okay. And of course, technology leaders want to require evidence of whether we're in compliance with the requirements and what is not in compliance, so that we can work at closing any of those gaps. So that was a real fast walkthrough on the world of technical resilience. I hope the items made sense, and I welcome any comments that you might have, but we'll get to those after Jill picks up on her part of the presentation. Over to you, Jill.
Thank you. I've been chairing the Service Resilient Working Group for the last 3 years, and we've written up our results in this book. That's the commercial. But what I do want to do is perhaps, Paul, if I could possibly ask, could you possibly flip back to the slide that you showed right at the beginning? Because I've been running the admit, and a lot of people came in a bit late, and it's such a good slide. I think we need to show that. Thank you. The reason that we're here is that IT as utility, users expect availability. This is the context in which both Alice and I are talking. But over and above generality, there is the very specific thing that software is inherently fallible. It fails. However much we test it, there will be vulnerabilities, there will be errors. And in addition, most people are running the sort of stuff that's shown in this picture, with lots of incompatible bits bolted together. There's the little peg at the bottom is open source, where it's a project some random person in Nebraska has been thanklessly maintaining since 2003, and she's retiring this year. What about the maintenance? Software has a long life. There is software around that's been embedded since 1970. In 1970, it was fine, but the environment's changed and it's falling over. Most new software isn't developed in-house, so IT professionals are dealing with supply chains and all sorts of contract negotiations that wasn't really what they were brought up to do. And the reason this is important is that, as we said right at the beginning, IT failures have significant impacts on GDP and productivity. And cyber attack headlines, but it's not the biggest threat to resilience. And we can't assume that AI is getting out of this. So what do we do? Well, the software service resilience group has worked. There's no magic bullet, but we do have some things to say. So if Paul will flip me forward all the way again, thank you. Right, okay. So these are some of the things that are important. Measuring the impact of outages. Alice referred to this. If it doesn't get measured, people don't know how big the problem is. And there is a framework. It's in use. It needs to be in wider use. It talks about things like availability and lost user hours. Because if an organization is just thinking about the time of an outage, CrowdStrike doesn't show up as all that bad, but CrowdStrike was millions of people. So it's lost user hours that we need to be thinking about when we're thinking about measuring the impact of outages. And that framework also talks about data integrity. It talks about risk to life and health, and it talks about financial damage. And it's a framework that exists, and it is going to be part of the UK government's cyber security and resilience bill in the autumn, and that will give it wider visibility in our domain, which I think is really useful. And the second aha that we got in the working group when we started looking at this was that in financial services, they've gone a long way ahead of a lot of the rest of the industry. And they've talked about important business services because it's recognized that organizations form a whole network. There are a lot of cross-organizational dependencies. And so organizations need to know what services they're providing, not only that affect their direct customers, but affect the customers of their customers. And that leads to the definition of an impact tolerance, which came up in Alice's discussion. And an impact tolerance is how long could this go down without it hurting us immeasurably? And so some business services, obviously, if they're down for an hour, it's a real problem. Some, okay, it's a day. Some, maybe it's a week. But the discussion at board level about that impact tolerance, as well as defining the important business services, is one of the important bridges that we as IT professionals need to be aware of. Because as Alice said, it's this communication between IT and the business guys. And we won't be able to improve resilience unless we improve the communication with the board. The next point is about understanding risk. You know, we've got a load of technologies for understanding risk. There are risk registers, but none of the risk registers I've seen, and I've been looking at them recently, actually deal with the complexity that most organizations are dealing with now. Alice produced a number when we were talking about the number of organizations in their supply chain. And I think it was several thousand. Was it, Alice? Several thousand?
Yeah, it's hundreds of thousands.
Yeah. So supply chain management is a whole new ballpark. And if it's left to the IT people, they don't really know where to start because none of us have actually had that understanding and training. So big skill gap there. The next heading is that these complex systems, they often wobble before they break. And so by looking at the incident analysis, failure analysis, and also looking at ongoing collection of data, we ought to be able to anticipate and prevent failures to a better extent. So a group of us looked at some really useful data from 9 banks in the UK over 2 years in terms of their sources of outages. It was published by the Treasury Select Committee. And what it found was that upgrades were the cause of half the outages. Well, that's actually a bit bad. We ought to be able to do it better than that. And then there's another question. When you start talking about resilience to IT people, sometimes they just go, oh, you have to do resilience by design. You can't possibly. No, well, we've got a system that's unresilient. There are some things that you can do during maintenance, during upgrades, in terms of thinking about using some of the principles from resilience by design to actually contain the impact of failures and reduce the failures. And that, I think, is something we're going to hear a lot about, because we have a real world here. It is like that crazy castle that both Paul and I showed you. And unless we get better compartmentalization, one small failure will propagate through the whole thing. So there are some good innovative thinking happening. The working groups produce some amazing papers. They are on the BCS ITLF website. They're open, have a look at them. And I'm now going to hand over to Paul to see whether anybody has put any questions in the chat. And he also did say at the beginning, if anyone would like a copy of the slides, if they put their details in the chat, then we can send them. So over to Paul.
Well, I think there's a lot of good information that we've just had. You know, do we need more sessions like this? Is it a good approach to making digital services more resilient? What should be covered? Any questions? Please put them in the chat and comments. I noticed that Terry had a number of comments in the chat. Would you like to talk more about that, Terry? Also, another thing from to Alice is, what is the career path for business continuity?
That's a great question. It just depends. I was a software engineer and came up through management, did a lot of different roles, leading development teams, operational teams, and I was a senior director, and my organization got disbanded. And the only place that was open in the company was business continuity. And that's how I wound up in business continuity. But that, a lot of people land into it that way. Others are intentional about it. The career path, it really is up to you as to where you would want to go. I will say this, with business continuity, you are in a position to learn the most about your organization, to actually learn the whole organization and where the good things are, where the pitfalls are, what are the biggest issues. And so it really is a good grooming spot if you want to move into more senior management roles, because it gives you a good understanding of the overall organization. So for me, it wound up being my sweet spot and where I've spent half of my professional career. Others, it might be a stepping stone to doing something broader and a different path. So it really depends on what you want to do and what your organization offers, but it's actually something everybody should be understand what is business continuity and how it applies to them, because it's really everybody's role.
Terry, did you want to make your comments?
Yeah, I totally agree with Alice on a lot of the things that she said. Which it's nice to see that an American is actually looking at operational resilience in that light, because it's been a long time coming. Sorry, Alice, I had to have that dig. Getting into operational resilience or business continuity. Well, I started out as a soldier, so I came from a military route. But I think anybody who's been in the not the early days of IT, because we're not old enough to be that old as IT is, really. No, you're not, Jill, before you start on me.
Whoa.
And before business continuity was business continuity, it was basically a ITDR,
Yeah.
backups, and then the people got involved with health and safety, and then people started thinking about, well, actually we've got these computers up, we've got these people out of the building. What about the business? So I think there's multiple routes to come into it, but I think it's what Alice said. It's understanding the whole of the business, understanding what's key to the business, and that's sometimes difficult because you may be at the top flying at 50,000 feet and not actually know how your business operates. And you may be at the bottom in the coal mine and not actually know what your company does. And we've got to sit in between all that and do that. The thing that I would suggest is that when we start looking at resilience, we have to look at it holistically and stop looking at it in silos, right?
Yes.
If we start looking at it, if we stay in the old Victorian management model of you're in HR, you're in sales, you're in manufacturing, you're in business operations, then we're going to fail. We have to look at it from a service delivery point of view, which again, I'm very much in line with what Alice was saying. And we've been doing this in the UK with our IBSs for such a long time now. But yeah, the one thing I would add to that is when you start looking at your operational resilience, think of what the minimum viable configuration and capability is that you need to keep the show on the road. Not everything needs to be keeping running because that'd be far too expensive. But people looking at it, look at what's your commitment to the market. If it's 24/7, then you've got to be there, right? It's in your contracts. If it only Monday to Friday from 8 till 5 o'clock and you don't care about the evenings and the weekends, that's all you have to commit to. And it's not everything. It's the thing that you provide the service for. Are you worried about your HR systems? No, just worried about payroll. For me, I'm just worried about my payroll, right? I'll run last month's payroll. Easy done, ticking the box. But actually being able for people to look at the guys that were in Spain recently, 11-hour outage, right? No way to use digital currency, no way to get money out of the banks, no way to get out of that lift that you're stuck in for 11 hours, no way to get out of the trains, no cool water, no air conditioning. These are the types of things that affect people and affect businesses that we need to focus on. And I'll stop now because I could go on for hours, as Jill knows.
I'm with you, Terry. We could talk all night long.
Oh, yeah. I'll be at BCI World, Alice, if you come in.
Awesome. I'll see you there.
Thanks, Terry. Steph, you had some comments. Do you want to talk through them?
Yeah.
Steph, I think you're still on mute.
I see her come.
There you go. Hello.
Hello.
Hello. No, I was just saying what a great session this is and how important it is. Having come back, well, I worked in telecommunications for over 10 years, so I'm still a baby in a big fish tank. And I've gone back to education to go and retrain. But I see it time and time again, especially with businesses here in the UK. There's no backup plan if things go wrong. There's no crisis strategy. And then when there is, people sort of wave their arms around going, I don't know how to deal with this. Oh my goodness, what do we do? Let's throw it at IT, and bombard them like it's their responsibility. And actually, I think you're absolutely right. It's got to go from both levels. So you've got to go from the ground up, and the up's got to go from the up down and see exactly what's going on. And from that holistic point of view, I actually teach secondary school kids, and business continuity is something that I do teach them, in the sense of if there's a crisis, and when I mean crisis, I mean all your systems shut down. So working in telecommunications, if the network goes down, and working in retail, how would that affect me in retail? Well, I can't use my card machines. I can't use my credit checking system. I can't run the necessary checks or the ID checks that I need to for my customers. So what's the backup plan? What do we do? Fortunately, in one of the telecommunications companies, which I won't go into detail now, did have that strategy in place, but many don't have that strategy. And as you quite rightly point out, the customer loss on that is absolutely phenomenal, especially when it's across the estate and not just in a localized one shop. So for me, I find this information particularly useful.
Thank you.
Alice, would you like to comment on that?
I think she was spot on with what she was saying.
Great. Thank.
I think Sarah had a question.
Yeah.
Rather than a question, I'll be honest, it was more of a comment. I had the pleasure of recovering the Defence Academy of Great Britain from a cyber attack, which meant we had a total compromise. And I would say the things that I was really taught by that event were to get the right people into your core team. And it's not a lot of people. It's actually a very small number of people. And I think I ended up with a handful with the right skills and the right understanding of the business. It is to control the expectation of your stakeholders very early. So it was very clear we were going to be down for a considerable amount of time. And so being able to set that expectation early and also put a number and actually say, we're going to need some money to recover this. So senior people, I want you to go and think about where you're going to find this amount of money. Oh, and by the way, I'm going to take you completely offline for 2 weeks. You're going to have nothing because I'm going to need that time to rebuild all of the equipment. Again, setting that expectation. But then also really understanding what the business, what's important to the business in the short term. And in that instance, I had 40-odd thousand students on campus on a site with very poor phone coverage, where I'd had to turn off all of the network services. Now, it was the back end of COVID. One of my team had the fantastic idea of ringing up an events company and seeing if we could get a Wi-Fi solution across the site. We got it up a week later. The amount of noise and the amount of capability that the noise went away, the capability for people to actually just do some of the basic stuff they needed to learn was an absolute game changer and gave us a real air gap of time and space to get on with the rest of the recovery. And then the other thing that they did, which was incredibly creative, is we lost our website as part of that event. And someone suggested going to the UK National Archive of Websites. You might not know this, the British Library takes a screen dump of websites on a regular basis in the UK. We went and screen dumped back our own website, got it back up and running with it, where it said clever things like click here to apply. We just replaced it with send an email to whatever. And within 10 days, we were able to have a functional website back up and running. So don't get caught up in recovering the systems as you had them. Think about what your business priorities are. What are the things that are going to make that 80-20 difference that then give you the time and the space to recover everything else? So
I couldn't agree more, Sarah. It's you've got to have your core team, and hopefully they're the ones that you're working with to build your resilience strategies to begin with. And those are the people I pull in and on regular testing, but also then getting other people involved in case that, my core team is not available when the world goes sideways. But having that prioritized list and what is most critical, that is, that comes in doing the business impact analysis, getting that all sorted out. But that prioritized list is what when you've been brought completely to your knees, if you've got to know what's the most important thing, what's that biggest critical dependency to bring up first, and then go from there. And you're right, it's managing that message of, well, that is, what's the biggest important thing for the company or the organization. That's what you're focused on. You're not focused on all the HR systems and all the other things. Those can come in time, but you've got to restore service to your customer. And this is what and by the way, it doesn't have to be the full service. It's what's that minimum viable product, right?
yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And the other thing I would say is think about your people in this. Every IT tech I know wants to strap their underpants to the outside of and go all superhero on you and wants to stay all night. And actually what you need is, who are the people who are going to come in at 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock the next morning and pick it up and keep that recovery going? You have to have a second wave. You've got to send people home.
And by the way, that's why right now, and what I'm doing in my day job is we're testing in that mode. It's round the clock testing. We're not stopping just because everybody wants to go get some sleep. No, I tell the managers, you got to staff this round the clock. because
Yeah.
they have to get used to doing that, so that when the event occurs that we actually have to do it for real, they already know what to do.
No, fantastic. Thank you.
Mhm.
Richard, would you like to make your comment, or do you want me to read it from the chat?
Thank you. Yes, you can read it, so you can amplify it better.
No, okay. Richard said, I work in financial services. A major concern that keeps me awake is the loss of data and defining realistic RPOs. Today, over 97% of transactions come via digital channels on a 24/7 basis. A few minutes interval is too long a time to create catastrophic consequences. Alice?
That I understand the concern and why that would keep you up at night. Then you have to look at what are your data backup strategies or data synchronization strategies. So it comes in different levels, and also then what is the budget that can be supported. So depending on what your architecture is, it may be you're doing continuous synchronizing continuous replication or near real-time replication to for your standard backups, and then you're taking maybe 15-minute intervals that go to your mutable backup. The technology exists to do this. It can be done, however, it all comes with a cost. And it depends on what the business can withstand and what's the risk they're willing to take. Snapshots, etc. We could get way down in the weeds on the actual implementation, but it depends on what your architecture is, and also what the risk appetite of the organization is, plus what funding you have available. It becomes a business decision, but the challenge is identifying the risk and what's the impact of not doing, doing that ultimate solution that would have you completely covered with only maybe seconds of data loss, versus one that's a lower cost option that leaves you exposed with 15 minutes to a day's worth of data lost. And when you're dealing digital transactions, especially when it's people's finances, that tolerance is very low. So it challenges the strategy, challenges engineers to develop that right strategy. But I will say this, the technology does exist, but it comes at a cost.
Yeah, Michael made a point, which is a 15-minute mutable backup is a lot of data that you've lost. I think that the discussion when you're in crisis versus the discussions when you're at budget time don't seem to align.
Exactly. That's why you document everything and make sure there is a log of those decisions that were made, so that when you have that opportunity to have that wonderful conversation with your senior leader of how the blank did we get here, you can show them, here's how we got here. If you don't like the answer, then this is what we need to do. So Terry's got his hand up.
Yeah, I just wanted to add for Richard, and I work in financial services as well. I work for MasterCard, to be specific, and we deal with trillions of transactions every day. You need to be very, as Alice turned around and said, you need to be very, very specific as to what data you really need to continue to operate, and what data you can afford to either lose or get back at a later date. Now, I'll give you for instance, I set up the business continuity and resilience for our national lottery many years ago. I increased the operating costs of the national lottery by 150% to ensure they did not lose a keystroke. It was part of their license requirement, but that's what you're looking at. If you want to have total availability, total accessibility, it's going to cost. but you can put your data into multiple tiers. Tier 0, must have. Tier 1, vital to have, but not as much as getting the show on the road. Tier 2, maybe customer data, right? Tier 3, maybe sort of transactional data, or the other way around. But you've got to take your bite-sized chunks to what you can afford to deal with. So I wouldn't let it keep you awake at night, but I would spend a lot of time actually doing the pre-planning and understanding what your data is and what the value is. If it's very transactional data, then the loss of that data may be very minimal because you only handle it for a very short period of time. Depends what your clearance cycle is. If your settlement and clearance cycle is once every day, then you may be in trouble. You may need to cut that down to 15 minutes. But yeah, I wouldn't lose sleep over it. I would document what it is. As Alice said, you've just got to document people's decisions.
Yep.
So I'm trying to put my hand down now.
Jill, is there any way we can follow up on the topics you mentioned earlier?
Well, what Michael Krymans and I have been discussing is whether in probably October, November, he might do a warts and all analysis of what he's learnt at Rabobank with trying to implement problem anticipation. He thinks he can get clearance to talk about that. And if he can, that would be an absolutely fascinating session. So that's an offer, a potential offer.
Michael, would you like to talk a little bit more about that?
I hope I haven't quoted him out of context. So I think, there we go.
There he
Yeah,
is.
you did catch me off guard, Jill. Thanks. I mean, there's lots of things. I mean, as Alice knows, and as Paul and Jill know, this is a topic that's very dear to my heart, working in technology. And some of the questions or some of the comments I've put there are some things we run into in practice. You know, for example, how do you set an RTO? Do you set an RTO for your worst case if you get a cyber attack, or do you set it for a case when you don't have a cyber attack? Because there's no way you're going to recover within minutes if you have a cyber attack. If you're ransomware, you're not going to get back to minutes. So those are just some of the practical things that we run into. But I think what you're referring to, Jill, is one of the things that we do a lot at the Rabobank is we try and learn from things that have gone wrong. So we do a really thorough analysis of and find a root cause, not just what was the cause, this went wrong or that went wrong, but what were the circumstances that allowed that to happen, and what can we learn from that? So it's a more sustainable improvement. But there's lots of things I think we can talk about. What Alice was talking about software. How do you develop software to be resilient? I know at the bank, a lot of the incidents that we have are not to do with infrastructure, but just to do with things in your whole application landscape. And you can fail over as much as you want, but that'll be the same problem in your failover. So there's a lot that can be done in that space as well. But yeah, I think we've got enough to talk about in October, Jill.
Yep. Okay, sounds like an offer. Okay, and it's recorded. So there we go. Thank you.
And you also recorded that I need to get approval.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Okay, I think it's been a great meeting, and we're at our time. So everybody's left me their email. I'll send you a copy of the slides.